طيب. We start off with the first one, huh? Like I said. جزاك الله خيرا. نزيدك؟ بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين حمدا كثيرا طيبا مباركا فيه كما يحب ربنا سبحانه وتعالى ويرضاه، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله وخليله وصفيه وأمينه على وحيه ومصطفاه من خلقه، صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. أما بعد، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. In today's khutbah, earlier we were mentioning the greatest thing to be mentioned. The greatest thing to be mentioned. We were reminding ourselves and trying our best to remind the brothers and the sisters and the listeners and the watchers of the greatest thing to be reminded of, and that is how to obtain the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How do we get the love of Allah? How do we obtain this great gift? Are there signs? Are there ways? Are there statements? Are there acts? Times and places, situations and conditions that Allah Azza wa Jal loves. And not only the general concept of Allah loving the thing or an act or a place or a time, but in which there is more love of Allah for a specific time, a specific place, a specific action, a specific situation. There are levels of the love of Allah. And there are levels of people and servants and slaves who are loved by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everybody understand this? Just like there are levels of Allah's hatred, and of Allah's anger, and of His wrath. And there are some of His servants who have been forsaken or hated more than others, wal-'iyadhu billah, depending on what they did, their deeds, their actions, what they said about Him, what they believed about Him, depending on how they rejected and belied His prophets and messengers, and the list goes on. So this is what we're talking about early in today's khutbah. Obviously, a khutbah is a simple, short sermon. If it was up to me, in every masjid that I go to, I would give a short 10-minute khutbah. But we know that the people may not understand this, they may not bear this, they may complain severely. No, we need more. We have to have more. Just like there are hadiths about the Prophet ﷺ's khutbah, or the sign of a man's fiqh, the hadith of Ammar in Sahih Muslim. He says, qisr al-khutbah, khutbah being short, and the prayer being long. And there are other narrations in which the Prophet ﷺ's khutbah, it says qaslan, it wasn't but so short. And how many Muslims today, unfortunately, have become Friday Muslims, like Sunday Christians. They just come to the masjid, the mosque, once a week. So there was once in Medina, me and a good friend of mine, a colleague of mine, we used to study and train together. We had a debate on this issue. And I said the khutbahs in America should be 10 minutes. That's it. It shouldn't be a long, drawn-out lecture, no 30, 40-minute, 45-minute lecture. That's not the original style of the sunnah. And he said, perhaps, but living in America today, the people barely come to the masjid. If we don't have an opportunity to speak to them, to address them, to shake them up once a week, then we'll never ever have any opportunity. So we had a debate on this issue. What's important is whether the khutbah is 30 minutes or 10 minutes, 7 minutes or 45 minutes, the khutbah is generally short and concise. And oftentimes there are things that I wish to share with you brothers and sisters, and other khatibs as well, but there isn't enough time. There just isn't enough time. Let alone the fact that the crowd is so diverse. everybody comes. Whatever knowledge, whatever level of knowledge people have, everyone is listening. So you have to keep it at a certain rate, a certain track, a certain gear. So with that being said, we want to share with you tonight, bidnillah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is the speech of Al-Allama Ibn Al-Qayyim rahimahullah ta'ala, and speaking and discussing the issue of Allah's love and how to obtain the love of Allah, the Mighty and the Majestic. How to obtain Allah Azza wa Jall's love. Ibn Al-Qayyim, he says in his wonderful work, Madarij al-Salikin, he says, كيف نتعلم المحبة? And we're reading from the Tahdhib, the summarized version of the book. On page 513, he says, في الأسباب الجالبة للمحبة والموجبة لها وهي عشرة. He says the reasons behind the slave obtaining Allah's love and the things which will request and necessitate for the slave to obtain Allah's love. In simple basic terms, 10 ways of getting the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. 10 ways of you obtaining Allah's love. Every Muslim, obviously, who has any care or concern for him or herself in this life and in hereafter is going to want to hear these 10 things. Ibn al-Qayyim, he says, أحدها قراءة القرآن بالتدبر والتفهم لمعانيه وما أريد به. The first of the 10 is reciting the Quran, reading the Quran, not just to read it and fly through it and run through it, like many, if not most of us do. Not just to memorize, say, I've memorized the Quran, I'm Hafiz Quran. Not just to have the halaqah, to give the khutbah, to give the class, I finished it, I completed it. He says, but reciting the Quran, reading the Quran, bit tadabbur, with reflection, with tafahumi fihi. He says, and digging and scratching beneath the surface. And understanding what Allah intends by this Quran. What is Allah saying? You read about the story of Thamud, of Ad. What is Allah talking about? Why? What's so important about the Thamud that they're still being mentioned, only Allah knows how many thousands of years later after their existence and destruction. But Allah constantly talks about Thamud. He talks about Ad. He talks about Musa and Fir'aun. Why? It's a tremendous lesson that's learned. Not from the one who just reads and flies from the Quran, but the one who's stopping, thinking, and pondering, reflecting that once upon a time, a very long time ago, there was a great nation, strong, powerful, formidable, and mighty. And this nation that was so strong and big and powerful and formidable, they became haughty, they became arrogant, they became conceited, they became full of themselves, and they thought that the different skills that they had, the talents that they had, the different accomplishments that they made were because of their intelligence and their genius and their physical strength and their skill and their craft. And Allah chose to send to these people messengers, prophets, to warn them, to remind them not to forget about Allah and the rights of Allah, not to forget about the poor people, the weak people, the widows, the orphans, and always constantly to remember the one who gave you what he gave you. And they rejected those messengers. They made fun of them. Some of them were killed. Some of them were persecuted. Some of them were harassed. Some of them were mocked. And the list goes on. And Allah, He destroyed those people. He destroyed them. He vanquished them. He wiped them out. So when I read the story of Thamud, whether it's in Juz Amma, whether it's in Surah 27, Surah 30, whatever Surah I'm reading, I have to stop and think about it. Thamud. An ancient people, an ancient prophet, a modern people, and a modern means of being warned. What happened then is certainly going to happen again. What happened then of Allah supporting Musa and his followers, Bani Israel, who are weak, who are inferior, who are outnumbered, outgunned, can certainly happen again today. A smaller, inferior force can win and be triumphant over a greater, larger, and superior force. And the list goes on. So what is Allah speaking about when He talks about إِذَا طَلَّقْتُمُ النِّسَاء, when you divorce women, when you intend to divorce women? What does that mean? It's a ruling. It's a hukm. It's something that Allah wants when it comes to when we divorce, and not to do it any kind of way. And the list goes on to any example that you want to bring up. So this is the first way of obtaining Allah's love, is to read the Quran, but not just reading the Quran. He says, but reflecting and thinking about it and saying to yourself, looking in the mirror, this applies to me. And I'm not just reading a fairy tale or a legend or a story or a fable or a wise book about some old people that no longer exist. Obviously, no Muslim is going to say this with his tongue, inshallah. But many of us may say this with our actions. We may say it with our actions. Allah talks about how He delivered this sect, this group, this small patch of believers from a bully, a tyrant. That was only for them. And it won't apply to us in the situation in which we're in right now. Many Muslims will say this with our actions. And the list goes on. So this is the first reason. Number 2, Ibn Qayyim, he says, الثاني التقرب إلى الله بالنوافل بعد الفرائض فإنها توصله إلى درجة He says here, the second reason is for a person to gain love of Allah, and obviously for Allah to love the slave. He says, or more specifically, to get the love of Allah, for you to love Allah, for you to love Allah, the slave to love Allah, he says, is getting closer to Allah by performing the nawafil, the recommended surrogatory acts of ibadah. After you've performed the mandatory acts of ibadah. Not before the fard, but after the fard. And that's a very big mistake, a capital mistake that many Muslims make today. You find them extremely missing the mark when it comes to the basic mandatory acts. Basic simple acts of Islam. Fundamental practices of the deen. Way off target, off track. And they'll go and they'll rush and they'll run to do this surrogatory act, extra act, and spend all their time and energy and effort, and they haven't locked down the fundamentals. Number 3, الثالث دوام ذكره كل حال أو على كل حال باللسان والقلب والعمل والحال. He says here, number 2 is what? Constantly remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Always being the remembrance of Him, verbally and physically, mentally and spiritually. Making the tasbih, the tahleel, the takbir, praising Allah with your tongue and also with your body. Physically praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and mentioning Him subhanahu wa azza wa jal. He says, wal hal, and the condition. We mentioned in khutbah as well, such as you being patient, you being courageous and brave, not cowering, you standing still, or you walking away from a situation. Your physical strength and stamina, your endurance as well. Ibn Qayyim says, الرابع إثار محابه على محابك عند غلبات الهوى والتسمن إلى محابه وانصعب المرتقى. Number 4 is to give precedence to what Allah loves over what you love. When it comes to a fight, do I go here and do this because I want to? Or do I go here and do that because Allah wants to? Allah wants this. Sleep in prayer. Hit the snooze button or get up and pray. Sleep feels good. I need sleep. I need energy. I need rest. It's comfortable. It's cozy. So do I continue to sleep, something that I love? Or do I get up and pray because something that Allah loves? Obviously, this is something that's easily said and more difficult to be done. He says, when sa'ab al-murtaqa, even if the ladder is steep, even if it's a bit difficult, but you have to make an attempt and an effort. Al-khamis, number 5, مطالعة القلب لأسمائه وصفاته ومشاهدتها ومعرفتها وتقلبه في رياض هذه المعرفة وميادينها فمن عرف الله بأسمائه وصفاته وأفعاله أحبه لا محالة. The next reason he says is to dig deep, he says, into the concept of Allah's names and attributes. Learning about the names and attributes of Allah, thinking about them, pondering over them, studying them, learning them. He says anyone who does this will love Allah, la mahala. It's a must. No way that you're not going to love Allah when you truly get to know who He is, subhanahu wa ta'ala. As-sadis, number 6, مشاهدة بره وإحسانه وعلائه ونعمه الساطعة والظاهرة فإنها داعية إلى محبته. The 6th reason is thinking and pondering on the things that Allah has done for you. Look how kind Allah is, how bountiful Allah is. Look at all the things He's blessed us with. He says when you constantly do this, it's going to get you in the mood, the mode, the mindset of being more grateful, more appreciative, and more loving of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's the universal nature. As the people of knowledge say, إِنَّ النُّفُوسَ جُلِبَتْ عَلَى حُبِّ مَنْ أَحْسَنَ إِلَيْهَا. They said that the natural innate disposition of a soul is to love the one who does good for it. It's to love the one who does good for it. You naturally love your mother because your mother does good for you. Your father does good for you. You love your wife because what she does. You love your husband for what he does for you of good. You love your children because they're good to you. They're kind. And the list goes on. That's natural. If you want to get someone to compromise their position, if you want to get someone to give up their struggle and their fight, you buy them out, as we say. Give them something that they love. Someone gives you money. You're not going to talk about them in any old kind of way anymore. No way. Because they gave you a lot of money. They gave you these gifts. They bought you. You sold your soul for this wealth because you love wealth. So therefore, you're naturally going to at least love the person who gave you the wealth, or at least you're not going to say what's necessary to be said about them because of the natural position of the soul. السابع وهو من أعجبها انكسار القلب بكليته بين يدي الله تعالى وليس في التعبير عن هذا المعنى غير الأسماء والعبارات. Number 7, he says, and perhaps this is from the most wonderful of all of them, from the most من أعجبها, the most wonderful. He says what? It's for a person's heart to just break down in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Inkisar al-qalb. It's for your heart to be broken down in total submission to Allah. Just cry and weep out to Allah. Oh Allah, I have nothing but you. Nothing but what you give me. I'm a sinner. I'm weak. Help me. Support me, oh Allah. Forgive me. Cry out to Allah and to break down in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not in front of the slaves, but in front of Allah azza wa jal. Ibn Qayyim says there's no equivalent, there's no word for us to fully express this meaning. And he's saying that in Arabic. Let alone in what? In English. He says there's no full expression to get the true concept of a person's heart being broken, his body being totally falling down in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala azza wa jal. الثامن, he then says الخلوة به وقت النزول الإلهي لمناجاته وتلاوة كلامه والوقوف بالقلب والتأدب بأدب العبودية بين يديه ثم ختم ذلك بالاستغفار والتوبة. The 8th, it says, is looking out for the time in which there's the heavenly dissension. The wee hours of the night, the last hours of the night. And he says, to seclude yourself with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Call out to Allah, have an intimate dialogue with Allah, read the kalam of Allah, and having the proper etiquettes of a servant and slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as it's necessary. He says, and after you perform this worship, after you have this intimate relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, calling Him, begging Him, reading His words, he says, ثُمَّ خَتْمْ that, he says, finishing all of this by asking Him to forgive you. With istighfar, after your dua, after your Quran, after your recitation. He then says, التاسع مجالسة المحبين الصادقين والتقاط أطايب ثمرات كلامهم كما تنتقي أطايب الثمر ولا تتكلم إلا إذا ترجعت مصلحة الكلام وعلمت أن فيه مريدا لحالك ومنفعة لغيرك. He says the 9th reason is to sit with the people who love Allah, those who are truthful in their love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In other words, sitting with the righteous, accompanying the righteous, taking your friendship, your companionship with the righteous. Alright, understand this? Your brothers and your sisters should be people that love Allah azza wa jalla. And he says, and benefiting from their speech, taking from their wisdom, taking from what they do and how they do it. Learning, sitting with wise men and women. Look how silent they are. They don't talk that much. They don't run their mouths. They don't make threats. They don't holler and bark and growl at people. They don't lose their temper like that. You never see them out of shape and bent up because he's wise. He has control over his emotions, over himself. And the list goes on. When it's time to pray, it's time to pray. You don't see him looking at things he's not supposed to look at, listening to things he shouldn't be listening to, and the list goes on. And then Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah ta'ala, he then goes on to speak about the concept of speech, and not to speak unless there's a maslahah, a benefit. Don't speak unless you know there's someone who actually wants to hear you, and what you actually have to say is going to benefit from what you actually have to say. And that's another discussion. Last but not least, he says, Al-Ashira مباعد كل سبب يحول بين القلب وبين الله عز وجل. فمن هذه الأسباب العشرة وصل المحبون إلى منازل المحبة ودخلوا على الحبيب، وملاك ذلك كل أمران استعداد الروح لهذا الشأن وانفتاح عين البصيرة وبالله التوفيق. The 10th and final reason he says is to cut off anything that prevents and hinders you from reaching these goals. Anything that comes between you and actualizing what we've explained to you and taught you, to cut them off. Anything that comes between the heart and between the love of Allah the Mighty and Majestic. Women, money, men, sports, music, jobs, work, college, whatever it is. Should I keep the job? Should I stay married to this brother? Should I get married to this sister? Should I go to Medina? Do I have to listen to my parents? Should I pray this masjid? Should I donate to that masjid? Blah, 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 blah. Does it get you closer to Allah or further from Allah? Do you honestly feel good after you perform that act? Do you feel closer to Allah? Honestly, most people don't. Some people who say that they do, they're actually lying to themselves. You know deep down inside, you don't believe in that. That doesn't make sense. After you hear this speech or you go here and you do this with this person and that brother, you honestly don't feel like a more pious Muslim. You don't. So that is considered to be a major yardstick. What's beneficial and what isn't. What do you feel like afterwards? You feel clean, pure, and pious? Or you feel hyped and raged up, ready to gun somebody down, beat somebody up? Something's not right. If your heart feels further away from Allah than before you sat and listened and heard and benefited. You're supposed to feel closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we mentioned this in the 40 hadith on seeking knowledge, the kalam of Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah ta'ala, the teacher of Ibn Qayyim. That beneficial knowledge has an effect on the body and the soul, as on the soul specifically. The soul benefits from beneficial ilm, like food benefits from food and drink. You have a good meal, you say, oh, alhamdulillah, that hit the spot. Is this not the case? You say, alhamdulillah, that was good. I don't feel bloated. It wasn't greasy. It wasn't too much food. It was what? Just what? You feel good. You feel comfortable. You can drink some tea, drink some coffee. Everybody understand this? You don't feel like you're about to pass out and die. You don't feel my stomach is upset. It was too greasy. It was too spicy. It was too this. It was just what? Alhamdulillah. You're tired. You have a headache. You have a migraine. You eat something. The migraine goes away. You feel re-energized. Nah? You wake up in the morning. You have a good breakfast. A good lunch. You're ready to go back to work to do what you were previously doing. The body immediately feels the what? The benefit of the nourishment. It feels the benefit of the what? Of the nourishment, of the wholesome food. And the same applies to the soul and the beneficial knowledge. You can feel it, what? No doubt about it. That was a benefit. I learned something. I feel closer to Allah. Not what? Further from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He says, so these 10 reasons are the only reasons why those who love Allah have reached Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He says, and all of these things go back to two main concepts. The first is to prepare your soul. And the second is to have open eyes. Prepare your soul, get in the right mindset, right state of mind, and open up your what? Your eyes. Allah Azza wa Jalla truly knows best. This is in brief. We ask Him to bless us with the love of Him. We ask Allah Azza wa Jalla to love us. We ask Him for His love of us and to forgive us of our sins and have mercy on our souls and guide us to the Sirat al-Mustaqim. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen.